Hi, I'm Reverend Wendy Craig-Purcell here at the Unity Center in San Diego. Thank you so much for watching today. If you'd like to support the work that we do here, please consider making a contribution. Go to our website. It's easy to do. Thank you in advance for that contribution. It's a perfect way for us to bring this series of exploring together some of the principles and practices of spiritual maturity, bringing it all together. You know, I began the series by asking the question, why does it even matter? You know, in lives that are so full of so many very real outer responsibilities, this thing called spiritual maturity, spiritual mastery, why does it matter? Well, it matters because when we get it right, everything else in our life begins to fall into place. It's like the one thing that can make the biggest difference in our relationships, in our physical health, in our well-being, in our businesses. It's a single thing that can make the biggest difference when we are growing and evolving spiritually, when we are spiritually mature and awake. And for many of us, we grow into this. We don't usually start on such a path. And for many, it seems to happen as a result of one of two things. Either we've gotten hit by the cosmic 2x4 and bam, our eyes are open, we're in pain, we're experiencing suffering in some area of our life, and we want out. We don't want to stay where we are. The cosmic 2x4 often is what causes people to get on some sort of spiritual growth path. Or what happens is there's just this gnawing sense that we have that there's got to be something more to our life experience. And we find ourselves beginning to probe into the deeper mystery of life and asking some of those very deep philosophical questions. You know, who am I? Who are you? Why are we here? How did this all come to be? Why do difficult things happen or bad things happen to good people? And so it's usually one of those two things that gets us into this kind of deep work. And it is work, but it's work that does produce tremendous results. And so we've been exploring one way of looking at some of the tools and principles and practices that help us in this journey of spiritual maturity. And so, as I said, I wanted to review some of those with you. And what I'd like to suggest you do is listen to each of them and kind of notice how they land in your mind and in your heart. And if there's one that either kind of rubs you the wrong way, take note of that one, because that may be a little signal to do a little bit of probing deeper and work there. Or if there's one that you just feel, yeah, I really resonate with that. I want to understand that better. Or I want to really commit to that. Because we don't have to do everything all at once. But if we will really heed the nudges and the guidance of our gut, our soul, we will always be led on the path that is right for us. So we began our journey with the understanding of the concept of oneness, of our true identity. And this really speaks to one of Unity's 5 principles about who and what we really are and who and what God really is. It's the recognition that we are one with the one. We are one with the one. You are one with the one. I am one with the one. Some people refer to the one as God. Some people refer to the one as life with a capital L or the universe with a capital U. Some refer to the one as spirit. Whatever name you give or you think of when you think of the one, meaning the essence of life itself, you are part of that. You are made in the image and likeness, the essence of that. Some call it the God spark. And the truth of the matter is, we didn't put it in ourselves. It is what we are by the very nature of our existence. We can ignore it. We can fall asleep to it. And that is tremendously problematic to us,
Because when we are asleep to the reality of our oneness with the one, that we are made in the image and likeness of this, we do all sorts of crazy things and can get into all sorts of difficult situations and capable of doing all sorts of things out of the darkness that exists within every one of us. But the truth of the matter is that the true essence of us is holy and divine. It is the same as the essence of spirit. And our journey is to awaken to it and to stay awake to it as much of the time as we possibly can. In the book, Farini writes about this. He said, "It is our communion with God in the silence of our hearts that nurtures the divine spark within and helps it to grow to a steady flame that sheds its light on all the dark places of our soul. It illumines error and burns away untruth." I like that. It illumines error and burns away untruth. It centers us and keeps us connected to our source so that we can be in the world with compassion for ourselves and others. The second idea that we explored was the concept of equality. And you may recall that this was a message I gave the Sunday immediately following the insurrection at our nation's capital. And the timing of it was truly divine timing, to talk about equality from the spiritual truth of what it is. Equality means that though we are unique, we are all of this same essence. We are all one with this one. And recognizing that must then be translated into how we actually interact with each other. Jesus, our teacher and way shower, said that as you treat the least of these, you treat me also. As you treat the least of these, you treat me also. As you and I treat the one that we find to be sandpaper to our soul, in essence is the way we are treating our teacher and way shower. As you treat the least of these, you treat me also. That's not an easy teaching to practice in all places and at all times. I'm a practitioner of a form of meditation that is often referred to as metta meditation. And it often begins with a prayer of blessing and well-being for a favored teacher, then blessing and well-being for self, then blessing and well-being for loved ones, then blessing and well-being for strangers, and then blessing and well-being for the one that is most difficult for me or for you to love. It is the expansion of this heart of compassion and awareness of our brotherhood and sisterhood that is essential, and it is grounded in how we treat one another, treating one another from a place of equity, from a place of equality. Our very country was founded on this principle, right? In the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, these sacred texts speak to this idea of equality and equity. It's still, to a certain extent, aspirational for certain segments of our society, but we can work to achieve that. We must work to achieve that true equality, that true equity. It is true that while we are all equal, we have not all started at the same starting point. And this is where really having the eyes of compassion to one another's starting points and one another's life circumstances and journey is not a political thing, it is a human thing. And anything that is a human thing is a spiritual thing that requires that we bring not just our humanity to the fore, but that we bring our spirituality to the fore, to recognize that equality in the world is a spiritual practice, and it shows up in how we treat one another. And so we looked at the principle of oneness, we looked at the principle of equality, we looked at the principle that naturally flows from these two of compassion and community. Of compassion and community. And this is heart and soul, I believe, of spiritual practice. It is the deep, not just intellectual, but deep soul understanding that our good is inexplicably, I can't say the word this morning, is absolutely woven together. My good is woven together with your good. Your good is woven together with my good. Sometimes in metaphysics, we put it under these words: no private good. That if you are suffering, then ultimately somehow your suffering is going to impact me as well, and vice versa. Our good is unmistakably woven together. But so is, if we want to call it such, so is the bad woven together. Think about the pandemic, right? It knows no borders. It doesn't play favorites. No private good, no private bad, woven together. That is the core of what drives this desire for community, what is the foundation of compassion. Farini made the point that the true spiritual student is always asking what is for the highest good of all, even if she or he doesn't have the answer. The true spiritual student is always asking, always thinking in every endeavor, in any difficult conversation or difficult decision, what is at the highest and best for all? And even if there is not an immediate answer to that question, something happens when we are willing to live in that question. When we are willing to let that question be a lens through which we hear things and see things, and through which we move, we subtly and deeply begin to move in a slightly different way. And we decide at a higher level. We speak from a higher level. So this idea of compassion and community is very much at the core of what it means to be awakening as a spiritual being, what it means to be growing spiritually. Our circle doesn't get smaller. Our circle of concern, our circle of care doesn't get smaller. It gets bigger and bigger. It gets bigger and bigger, leaving no one and nothing out. And then we looked at the principle of manifestation, which is a flowing through, right? It's not enough to just, Jesus said, to know these things. Blessed are you if you know these things. More blessed are you if you do them. And so we have to be about the work of manifestation, of creating. And in the beginning, for many of us on the spiritual path, manifestation and creation is about manifesting and creating the goals and desires that are important to us. And that's good. And it's also fun, isn't it? When we first awaken to the power of the mind, that we can move from the to me victim consciousness to the by me and through me and as me elevated states of consciousness, we begin to recognize the tremendous power that we have to co-create with the one, with spirit, with God, to create great good in our lives for ourselves. And that's rich and rewarding and fun. But it evolves too. All of this evolves. As our growing awareness expands, it no longer becomes satisfying to only care about, do we have what gives us a sense of joy and meaning and purpose in our lives? We begin to care even more deeply, is that so for others? We know that we cannot not create. We are always, each and every one of us, creating. The problem is, oftentimes we are creating unconsciously. And we have to learn. For most of us, there's a learning process of how to create consciously and how to stay in with visualizing and affirming and doing the day-to-day committed practice and work to bring forth that which we want to create in our lives, whether it's for ourselves individually or whether it's for the planet. But the process is still the same. Everything that exists in the external first began as an idea, a thought, an image in the mind and heart of someone that had the tenacity and the faith and the courage to keep putting one foot in front of the next and walking the path until that thing became a reality, and leaving room for God to kind of morph and redirect it into something even better than they may have thought of at the start. And then we took a look at the importance of free will. And so we know that we are one with the one, and that we must recognize that as true for each and every one of us, and that we must move through the world with an ever-expanding heart that cares not only about what's good for us, but what's good for the other. And then we have to be about manifesting that, bringing that into form. All of this is actually a very natural progression and sequence. And then we looked at free will, which is a reminder that we always have choice. We don't always exercise it, and therein lies a problem much of the time. But we always have choice. No one forces you to eat that second piece of cake or grab that handful of potato chips. No one forces you to buy that thing that you don't need and go into debt. No one forces you to say that nasty, ugly word. This is true of you and this is true of me as well. The most powerful moment is always the moment between stimulus and response. In that moment between stimulus and response, what kicks in, or what needs to kick in, is our free will to choose. As we grow and awaken more spiritually, we recognize that moment of choice. Not in hindsight, but as it's coming to us, we recognize, we catch ourselves, and we, in that moment of free will, in that moment of choice, no, wait a minute, I don't have to respond that way. I can respond from what is highest in me. I can respond from what is inclusive and better. I can choose to keep quiet. I can choose to step back until the right step becomes clearer to me. And so we become more empowered and more courageous and more consistent in recognizing and in seizing those moments, those choice point moments. Then we took a look at what Farini refers to as the principle of perfection. And so we're doing all of this beautiful work, and we're beginning to really expand in our understanding and our awareness, and our life is flourishing more. And then we get to a place where we have to really understand what this idea of perfection is all about. And it was one of the chapters in his book that I really enjoyed the most, because he writes about how this one can be the trickiest for so many of us, because we think when we hear the word perfection that it's about we have to be perfect, when in reality that's not possible. That what the idea of perfection is really trying to point to is this idea of excellence, this idea of a willingness to continue to grow and evolve, and most especially within the confines, that's not the best word here, within the expression of our unique gifts and talents, that each of us has a rich historical background, even with our woundedness and whatever family dynamics or groups of society we were born into. We have a rich background that has uniquely formed us, and we have our own soul qualities and gifts. And the idea of perfection is recognizing, reflecting upon what your gifts are. Maybe you're a natural teacher or a healer or someone that can just bring people together, or you're great at organizing or planning or entertaining or inspiring. It doesn't matter what the it is. The invitation to perfection is about perfecting or improving your gift so that your contribution to the human family can be a piece of making a positive difference. That it blesses not only you in the cultivation and improvement of it and the joy of giving it, but that it also blesses the human family. There is a direct link a direct link between one's financial well-being and satisfaction and the cultivation and improvement of one's gift. It means that we are playing to our God-given strengths. And to the degree that each of us does that better and better, to that degree we co-create healthier families, more thriving businesses, a healthier and more peaceful country, a healthier and more loving and harmonious society. And then last week we looked at the idea of healing and how we need places and groups and opportunities to heal, to bring about a sense of wholeness in our journey of awakening. I shared with you that many of us start our spiritual growth work often because we're hit on the head with a cosmic 2x4, or we're just probing deeply, trying to make sense of life. And for many of us, though we may think we can do it all on our own, we really do better when we awaken and we heal together. And to do that requires safe places. In other words, relationships or small groups where we can show up in our authenticity, our authentic selves. And so to the degree that we are able to bring our authentic self to the table, to the conversation, to the work at hand, to that degree we help influence the whole for good. The very idea of healing is about the idea of wholeness. And what we know about healing is that whenever something is out of balance, whether it's the body or our finances or our relationships, whenever something is out of balance, there is dis-ease, the lack of ease, right? But you put those words together, dis-ease, you have disease of the body, disease of the finances, disease of relationship. And all disease has at least a part of it is something is out of whack, something is out of balance, something's not right, and it has to be brought into balance. And that bringing into balance takes courage. It takes a willingness to look and examine. It then takes a willingness to be teachable and humble, to admit where we've messed up, either individually or collectively, and then a commitment to do the work. And what we know is if we don't do the work, the dis-ease, the disease, the disharmony, the infection doesn't go away. It only worsens until it demands that we pay attention. Whether it's a societal disease, such as racism being a predominant one, or disease of the body, if it's ignored, it will get worse and worse until it demands we do something about it. So as you've listened in, and maybe you were with us for every single Sunday, or maybe you missed a few, today, what did you hear that really stood out to you as this is a piece that you want to work on? Because that's where unity comes alive. What I mean by that is it's not enough just to listen. Our lives don't change because of information. Our lives change because of what we do with the information that we receive. Does it cause us to decide differently in our lives? Does it cause us to make different choices? Does it cause us to go in a different direction? Does it cause us to strive to elevate not only our own life, but as many of those around us as we possibly can? So putting these concepts into practice brings us into spiritual maturity, into healthy individuation, into being more self-actualized. We become more of our God selves. We become more engaged with life, and we become better equipped to make a difference in our families, in our communities, and in our world. I hope that you remain committed to your spiritual maturity and growth. And I support you in any way I possibly can in that journey. Namaste.